The year is 1941. London is being bombed nightly by the German Luftwaffe. And just as the Blitz seems about to end, Winston Churchill decides to up the ante. So tonight we are looking at the British home front during World War II. What do people actually do when their cities are being bombed? And why does Winston Churchill keep calling for more bombing? Hello, and welcome back to another episode. So, London, 1941. The sirens had faded. The bombs had stopped for now. In a quiet flat, an old woman lit a candle. She sat by the window knitting, listening to the city breathe again. Her name was Mary. Well, it isn't, but we're calling her Mary for this story. And this was the story that she often told. When I was a girl, she whispered, we used to dance in the streets. One day, we will again. Outside, the moon rose over broken rooftops, but inside her small room there was warmth. A fire crackled in the hearth. On the table beside her sat its dials glowing faintly in the gloom. Beside it lay a newspaper, its headlines proclaiming the latest victories of the British Eighth Army in North Africa. In the corner, a young girl slept, her face pale and drawn in the flickering firelight. This was Mary's granddaughter, Lily. She was 7 years old and had been through more of the war than most. Mary didn't remember much about life before the war. When she was a girl, the streets of London had echoed with laughter and the sound of streetcars. She remembered the thrill of skating on the Serpentine in Hyde Park, the awe of watching the King and Queen's golden carriage ride through the streets. But those memories were fading, replaced by the harsh realities of war. Since the beginning of the Blitz, Mary had spent most of her time taking care of her granddaughter. Lily's parents, Mary's son and daughter-in-law, had been killed in a bombing raid months ago. It was a tragedy that had shaken the small, close-knit community. As the bombs fell outside, Mary had cradled her granddaughter, shielding her body with her own. They had huddled together in the Anderson shelter in the backyard. The shelter was a flimsy structure made of corrugated iron and wood, but it had saved their lives. When the raid was over, they had emerged to find their street in ruins. Houses were burned and destroyed, the road impassable, but they had survived, and that was all that mattered. Since then, Lily had been afraid of the raids. The sound of the first siren would send her into a panic, and Mary would have to calm her down. It was a heavy burden for an old woman to bear, but Mary was strong. She knew that she had to be, for Lily's sake, she had to be brave. She had to show her granddaughter that the world was still full of hope. She told Lily stories of the old days, of the world before the war. She talked about the dances they used to have in the streets, how the men would put on their finest suits and the girls would wear their prettiest dresses. They would dance in the moonlight, she said, and the music would fill the air. One day we will dance again, she promised Lily. One day the bombs will stop falling and we will be free. Then we will dance again. Lily's eyes would widen as she listened to her grandmother's tales. For a moment, she would forget the fear and the uncertainty of the war. She would dream of a world where people danced in the streets and life was full of joy. But the bombs kept falling. And as the war dragged on, Mary's stories became more and more desperate. She started talking about the dances they used to have in the countryside, how the villagers would come together and celebrate the harvest. They would sing and dance around a maypole, she said, and the children would play games in the fields. It was a simpler time, a happier time, and Lily clung to her grandmother's stories as if they were life rafts in a sea of darkness. As the night wore on, the bombs grew louder and more frequent. Lily stirred in her sleep, her nightmares catching up with her. Mary reached out and stroked her granddaughter's hair. It's all right, love, she whispered. It's just a dream. You're safe here. Lily's breathing grew slower and more regular, and Mary watched over, her heart heavy with worry. Then suddenly, a loud crash shook the room. Both women looked towards the window as a large bomb exploded outside. The windows rattled in their frames, and Mary could feel the vibration in her bones. Lily's eyes flew open, and she scrambled out of bed, hiding behind her grandmother's chair. What was that? She cried, her voice trembling. Was that another bomb? Mary knelt down and pulled her granddaughter close. She could feel Lily's terror and knew that she had to do something to protect her. It's all right, love, she said, her voice shaking. It's just a bomb. It's not very far away. She forced a smile, but her eyes were filled with sadness. This wasn't a game, she thought. This was real life, and real life was dangerous. Lily buried her face in her grandmother's skirt, and Mary hugged her tightly. She could feel her granddaughter's body shaking with sobs, and she rocked her gently, trying to soothe her. Don't cry, love, she whispered. It's going to be all right. But even as she said the words, Mary wasn't so sure. She looked out of the window and saw the flames rising in the distance. Another house destroyed, another family torn apart. How much longer could this go on? She wondered. And then, as if in answer to her question, the bombs began to fall again, shaking the very foundations of the building. Mary drew her granddaughter close and closed her eyes. She thought of the dances they had told Lily about, of the laughter and the joy. She thought of the old world before the war, and she prayed that Lily would remember those stories when the bombs finally stopped falling. Now, the reason Mary tells Lily these stories is because it's one of the few things she can do to make her granddaughter's life bearable during these raids. But there's another reason too. It's because Mary herself needs to believe in the possibility of dancing again. If she didn't, then what was there to hold on to? The war had taken everything from her. Her husband had been killed in an air raid. Her son and daughter-in-law had died in a bombing run. And now she was living in a ruined city with her traumatized granddaughter. But even in the darkest of times, Mary finds solace in the stories she tells Lily. The idea of dancing again gives her hope that one day the bombs will stop falling, and the world will be a better place. The nightly bombings of London were part of a German strategy known as the Blitz. The goal was to break the British people's morale and make them want to end the war, but the British people were resilient. They had been through a lot during the war already, and they were not about to give up. During the Blitz, thousands of people were killed or injured, and many homes and businesses were destroyed. But the people of London never lost hope. They knew that they would rebuild after the bombs stopped falling, and they did. The city of London was badly damaged during the Blitz, but it was rebuilt after the war. Today, London is one of the most popular tourist destinations in the world. Every year, millions of people visit the city to see its famous landmarks such as Big Ben and the Tower Bridge. London is also home to some of the best museums and art galleries in the world. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. The year is 1944. The place, a quiet farmhouse in the south of France. A lone soldier sits at a table by candlelight, writing a letter. As the fire crackles in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the wall, he pours his heart out onto the page. This is a story about love. Not just any love, but a love so profound it defies the boundaries of life and death. A love that echoes through time itself. Our soldier is Private Louis Lefebvre, a young man who has seen more than his fair share of the horrors of war. But tonight, as he writes to his beloved Anna, the world outside, a world filled with conflict and chaos, seems a million miles away. He writes, "Dear Anna, the lavender still blooms." It's a simple sentence, yet it carries the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. For anyone who knows Anna, even from afar, would know that lavender was her favorite flower. And now, amidst the ruins of a world torn apart by war, the lavender continues to bloom, a testament to the enduring power of nature and a symbol of hope in the darkest of times. Louis dips his pen back into the ink, his mind drifting to memories of Anna. "I miss your laugh." He writes, the words flowing onto the page like tears. How could he not miss her laugh? It was a melody that had once filled his life with joy, a sound that echoed in his dreams and haunted his waking moments. Now, separated by the cruel whims of war, he finds solace only in the memory of it. As he writes, the candle flame flickers, casting dancing shadows on the wall, each flicker a silent echo of his beating heart. Outside, the wind whispers through the trees, carrying with it the scent of blooming lavender and the distant sounds of the war. But here in this quiet farmhouse, there's only the gentle crackle of the fire and the scratching of his pen on paper. For tonight, at least, he is at peace. But what if tomorrow brings news of his death? What if this letter, this outpouring of his soul, is to be read by Anna not as a love letter, but as a final goodbye. With a heavy heart, Louis continues to write. If you're reading this, maybe I made it home. It's a hopeful thought, a dream that sustains him through the long, lonely nights away from Anna, to imagine that one day he might return to her, to see the joy in her eyes, to feel the warmth of her embrace once more. It's a dream worth holding on to, a beacon in the darkness. However, the reality of war is a harsh and unforgiving mistress. And Louis, like all those who have loved and lost, knows that there is always the possibility that he may never return. With a trembling hand, he adds another sentence, a sentence that speaks of his undying love and the echoes of his soul. If not, read this when it rains. It's a request, a wish whispered on the wind, a plea for the heavens to deliver his message to his beloved. For when the rain falls, it washes away the pain and suffering of the world, leaving only the purity of existence. In the rhythm of falling raindrops, Louis finds a strange comfort. He believes that when rain falls, his love reaches Anna anew, carried on the wings of water, whispering tales of his devotion, bridging the vast distances that separate them. The rain to Louis is more than just a meteorological phenomenon. It's a messenger, a conduit between his heart and Anna's. As he writes, the fire in the hearth begins to die down, leaving only glowing embers that mirror the burning passion in his soul. Outside, the wind picks up, rustling the leaves in the trees and the scent of lavender. Heady and sweet drifts through the open window. It's a reminder of the beauty that still exists in the world, a beauty that transcends the ugliness of war. He finishes his letter with a simple, "Let it carry my love to you." It's a plea, a prayer, a hope that his love, pure and true, can withstand the ravages of war and time. He folds the letter carefully, as though to preserve its sanctity, and places it in an envelope. On the front, he writes, "For Anna," the name that has become his solace and his pain. With his letter finished, Louis stands up from the table. The shadows have deepened, and the fire has dwindled to a few dying embers. The room is filled with the scent of lavender, both from the field outside and from the sachet hidden beneath his pillow. It's a scent that evokes memories of happier times, of laughter and love shared with Anna. Outside, the wind continues to howl, and the rain, at last, begins to fall. Large drops at first, then a steady downpour. As the rain pours down, it carries with it the essence of Louis' love, his hopes, his dreams, his fears, his pain. The letter, along with countless others, is placed in a small wooden box, nestled among letters from other soldiers, some filled with bravado, others with despair. But all of them united by one common thread, the thread of love for a homeland and for the ones left behind. The next morning, the sun rises over the French countryside, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson. The war will begin again. For Louis and his comrades, the playful banter, the drills, the marches, the battles. The cycle of war is relentless, grinding down the human spirit day after day. Meanwhile, in a small village nestled in the hills, Anna wakes up to the sound of rain. She feels a deep sadness, a premonition that something is amiss. She doesn't know it yet, but today the world will change for her forever. As she goes about her daily routine, the scent of lavender fills her senses, reminding her of happier times. Suddenly, she remembers the letter from Louis. She runs to the desk where it's kept, her heart pounding in her chest. With trembling hands, she opens the envelope and begins to read. Her eyes scan the words, taking in the message from a soul no longer tethered to the mortal plane. As she reads, the rain intensifies, drumming against the window pane, as if in harmony with the rhythm of her racing heart. When she gets to the line, "If not, read this when it rains," tears stream down her face. The rain, which had been falling steadily, now seems to pour from the heavens themselves, mirroring the torrent of emotions surging within her. And then she reads the last line, "Let it carry my love to you." And in that moment, as the rain pours down and the lavender blooms, Anna understands. She understands the depth of Louis' love, a love that transcends the boundaries of life and death. The war, the separation, the uncertainty, none of it can diminish the bond they shared. For in the language of love, distance is but an illusion and death, a mere pause. As the letter ends, the rain reaches a crescendo, a deluge that seems to wash away the boundaries between the earthly realm and the ethereal one. In the midst of the storm, Anna feels an overwhelming sense of peace. She knows that Louis, wherever he may be, is at peace. His soul, like the lavender, continues to bloom, carried on the wings of the rain, whispering tales of everlasting love. And so the story goes, forever binding together two souls across the chasm of eternity. For in the grand tapestry of life, love is the eternal thread that binds all things. The year is 1943. The place is Italy. The war has been raging for 3 years. And in a small field hospital near the front, a very young nurse hums quietly as she moves from one soldier to another, changing bandages, offering water, whispering hope. She's only 20 years old, but already she knows that a bullet wound can fester, a broken bone can turn, gangrenous, a cough can choke. She's seen so much death and destruction that she has no illusions about life or the future. All she can do is her best. One day, as she's moving through the rows of weary soldiers, she comes across a young boy who asks her, "Will it hurt?" He doesn't say it. With any pain, his voice is too weak to betray his fear, but she understands what he means. She knows that every little movement, every little touch can bring pain. With a gentle smile, she replies, "Only for a moment." "Then it will pass," she says softly, knowing that she's not just talking about the pain of the moment. She's also referring to the passage of time, the passage of the war, and perhaps even the passage of life itself. Outside, the guns are echoing through the hills. They're a constant reminder of the violence that rages just beyond the tents. But inside her voice, there's music. It's a lullaby made not of words, but of care. A lullaby that whispers of a world where pain is only temporary and healing is possible. This is my story today. I'm going to tell you about a nurse who became known as the Nightingale of the Italian front. She wasn't born into wealth or privilege. In fact, she grew up poor and had to work long and hard to make ends meet. But despite the hardships of her early life, she always had a kind heart and a passion for helping others. When World War II broke out, she knew that she wanted to do something to help. So she joined the Red Cross as a volunteer nurse and was soon sent to a small field hospital near the front lines in Italy. Despite the danger, she was not afraid. She was too busy tending to the wounded and dying to be scared. As she worked, she noticed that many of the soldiers were young boys who had been taken from their families and forced to fight. She saw the fear in their eyes and heard the sadness in their voices, and she knew that she had to do something to help them. So, in addition to her other duties, she started visiting the children's ward at night and singing to the boys. She sang songs from her childhood, songs that her mother used to sing to her. And slowly but surely, the boys began to heal. Their wounds may have been grievous, but their spirits were lifted by the sound of her voice. As the war went on, more and more people began to hear about the amazing work that this young nurse was doing. Soldiers from all over Italy came to the small field hospital just to hear her sing. And before long, she was being called the Nightingale of the Italian front. But she never forgot the reason. Why she had started singing in the first place. She wasn't doing it for fame or glory. She was doing it because she wanted to help the sick and the suffering. So if you ever find yourself feeling down, remember the story of this young nurse. Let her story be a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope. And let her song be a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness can make a big difference in the world. The war was raging, the bombs were falling, death seemed ever present. But in the midst of all that destruction, a young nurse was bringing a bit of solace to those around her. I don't know her name. History hasn't recorded it, but I know her story. It's one that needs to be told, not just because it's an amazing story of bravery and kindness, but also because it's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope. Hope that sustains us when we're weary, hope that heals us when we're wounded, and hope that helps us to keep going when all seems lost. This story was inspired by real events. There was a young nurse who worked in a small field hospital near the front lines in Italy during World War II. She was known as the Nightingale of the Italian front, and although she didn't use superpowers to heal the sick and the wounded, she did something that was just as amazing. She sang to the soldiers, especially the children who had been taken from their families and forced to fight. Her songs brought them comfort and helped them to heal. Now, you might be thinking, what does this story have to do with me? Well, I'll tell you, no matter what you're going through right now. Whether you're facing a difficult situation or just need a bit of comfort, remember the story of this young nurse. Remember that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. And sometimes all it takes is a bit of kindness and a willingness to help others to make a big difference in the world. Now, I want you to close your eyes for a moment and picture yourself in a dark and scary place. Maybe you're surrounded by danger or feel like there is no hope for the future. What would you want someone to say to you? What would you want them to do to help you? Now, open your eyes and think about the young nurse. How did she make a difference in the world? What can you learn from her example? It's easy to get caught up in our own problems and to feel like everything is hopeless. But the truth is that there's always hope. We just need to be willing to look for it. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can make a big difference in someone's life. And sometimes all it takes is a willingness to help others to make a better world. So next time you're feeling down, remember the story of this young nurse. Let her story inspire you to be kind to others, no matter what. And let her song remind you that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope. There are many different ways that you can make a difference in the world. You can volunteer your time, donate money to a good cause, or simply be kind to others. It doesn't take much to make someone's day, but it can mean the world to them. The young nurse didn't have any superpowers. She was just a normal person who wanted to help others. But the impact she made on the soldiers was nothing short of miraculous. She showed them that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope. So if you're feeling lost or hopeless, just remember the story of this young nurse. Let her story inspire you to keep going. Let her song remind you that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear what you thought of it. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, please subscribe. I publish new stories every week, and I would love to have you along for the ride. Until next time, take care and remember that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope. In the stillness of the night, under a sky full of stars, a young woman stood on a balcony overlooking the sea. Her name was Isabella, and she was a nurse who had been working in a small field hospital near the front lines in Italy during World War II. For months, she had been caring for the sick and wounded soldiers, tending to their wounds, comforting their fears, and watching as they fought for their lives. The war had been raging for 3 years, and Isabella had seen her fair share of death and destruction, but still she had not lost hope. She believed that one day the war would end and peace would return to their land. As she stood there gazing out at the sea, she began to hum a tune, a melody that her grandmother had taught her when she was just a little girl. It was a simple song, but it was filled with such beauty and longing that it echoed the hopes and dreams of all those who heard it. Soon the other nurses on the balcony joined in, their voices rising and falling like the waves of the sea. The song spread throughout the hospital, lifting the spirits of the wounded soldiers and giving them strength to endure one more day. As the night wore on, the song became louder and more joyous, for it carried with it the promise of a new day, a day when the sun would rise again and the birds would sing their sweet songs, a day when the war would be over and peace would return to their land. The song was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. A hope that sustains us when we are weary, a hope that heals us when we are wounded, and a hope that helps us to keep going when all seems lost. If you, too, are facing a difficult time in your life, then remember the story of Isabella and the nurses who sang on the balcony. Let their song be a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. And let their bravery inspire you to keep going, to hold on to hope, and to never, ever give up. The year is 1945, and Germany has surrendered. The Allies are marching into the camps to liberate those who remain. The soldiers who guard the prisoners no longer bother to maintain the illusion of order. They've abandoned their posts, leaving behind only a few stragglers. We find ourselves in one of these camps. On the edge of a clearing stands a small group of prisoners. Their clothes are tattered and hanging off their emaciated bodies. Among them is our protagonist. His head is bowed, but when he raises it, we see that his face is youthful, almost boyish. Despite the horror he has endured, a spark still flickers in his eyes. At first glance, it seems he can't be older than 20. But when we look closer, the lines etched into his face tell a different story. His eyes, once bright and full of dreams, now carry the weight of centuries. Yes, this young man is a veteran of the war, forged in the fires of conflict. A German officer approaches, his face hardened by years of obedience to a corrupted regime. Next to him walks a French woman, her hands bound together, a cruel reminder of her captivity. The officer looks down at our protagonist and barks an order in German. He wants to know who's in charge here. The young man doesn't respond right away. Instead, he glances up at the sky. When he finally answers, his voice is soft but firm. He tells the officer that no one is in charge except the sky. The officer doesn't understand what he means. So the young man repeats himself, louder this time. No one is in charge here except the sky. The officer loses patience and strikes the young man across the face. As the other prisoners watch, the young man slowly rises, his eyes filled with sadness. He walks past the officer, ignoring the pain that courses through his body, and gazes up at the endless expanse above him. The officer demands that he be taken away, but before that, the young man turns back, facing the grim reality of his present and the uncertain future that lies ahead. With a newfound resolve, he asks the French woman about the state of affairs outside the camp, seeking to understand the world that awaits him. She responds with a simple, "It's terrible," leaving him to grapple with the weight of her cryptic reply. As he is led away, his gaze falls upon the ground, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The officer continues to berate him, questioning his loyalty to Germany and accusing him of disobeying orders. But the young man remains silent, his thoughts drifting far away from the turmoil of the present. As the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across the camp, the young man finds himself alone in a barracks. Around him are empty bunks and discarded belongings, silent witnesses to the suffering that has unfolded within these four walls. He sits on one of the bunks, his eyes staring blankly ahead, lost in the depths of his own thoughts. Suddenly, a knock on the door startles him out of his reverie. Standing before him is another soldier. His uniform is torn and his face is streaked with dirt and exhaustion. In his hand, he holds a piece of bread that he offers to the young man. There are no words exchanged, only a silent understanding between two men who have shared the horrors of captivity. The young man hesitates for a moment and reaches out to take the bread. He tears it in half and they eat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The young man looks at the other soldier and notices the hopelessness etched into his face. He sees the scars of war that run deeper than skin deep. Yet there is something in the eyes of this stranger that catches his attention. Despite the darkness that surrounds them, there is a flicker of light, a spark of resilience that refuses to be extinguished. It is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope is a powerful force that can sustain us. After eating, the soldier prepares to leave. He turns to go, then pauses and takes a small piece of wood from beneath his shirt. In his rough hands, it becomes a makeshift carving tool. He begins to etch something into the wood, then turns it to show the young man what he has made. It's a crude drawing of the sky, just like the one they both gazed upon earlier. Then he turns and walks away without saying a word. The young man watches him go, a strange feeling stirring within him. It's not just hunger or fatigue, but a longing for connection, for something beyond the barbed wire and the gray skies of captivity. Later that night, after everyone has gone, the young man sneaks out of the barracks. He walks past the watchtowers and the rows of empty barracks, each step taking him further away from the confines of the camp. As he steps into the forest, the trees seem to reach out to him like welcoming arms, offering him solace and sanctuary. The young man leans against a tree and closes his eyes, breathing in the fresh air that fills his lungs. For the first time in what feels like forever, he is free from the stench of decay and despair that has clung to him for so long. He opens his eyes and looks up at the sky. It is a beautiful night, the stars shining brightly in the velvet darkness. And there it is, the same sky that he had shared with the other soldier. It feels like a secret, a bond that connects him to something greater than his current circumstances. As he gazes at the stars, he whispers, "That same sky is over Ohio." It's a simple statement, yet it carries the weight of his longing and hope. The sky, in its vastness and beauty, transcends the boundaries of his captivity. It reminds him of the world that awaits him, of the loved ones he may never see again. And as he stands there, enveloped by the darkness and the silence of the night, he feels a sense of peace wash over him. The young man turns and walks deeper into the forest, his steps lighter now, his heart filled with a newfound determination. He doesn't know what the future holds, but he knows that he is not alone. The sky is watching over him, connecting him to all those who have endured and survived. And somewhere out there, in the faraway land of Ohio, home is watching over him too. The next morning, the sun rises over the horizon, casting its golden light on the dew-kissed grass of a peaceful meadow. Nestled amidst rolling hills and whispering trees, there stands a charming farmhouse, its windows sparkling like the eyes of a benevolent giant. In the distance, the faint sounds of a rooster crowing and a nearby stream babbling can be heard, creating a symphony of nature's tranquility. In the warmth of a cozy bedroom, a young girl stirs from her slumber. Her name is Lily, and her heart is filled with the innocent joy that only childhood can bring. As she yawns and stretches, the sunlight streams through her window, painting playful patterns on the floral wallpaper. Today is a special day. Her father, a soldier who has been away for many months, is coming home. Lily's mother, a picture of warmth and serenity, enters the room with a gentle smile gracing her lips. She kneels beside the bed and whispers sweet words to her daughter, preparing her for the joyous reunion that awaits. Soon, the sound of approaching footsteps echoes through the house, growing louder with each passing moment. Lily and her mother rush to the front door, their hearts pounding with anticipation. As the door opens, a tall figure stands silhouetted against the bright sunshine, his face partially hidden by the shadow of his cap. He steps inside, revealing a kind and weathered face etched with the stories of his experiences. His eyes, though, sparkle with the unwavering love of a father returning to his child. Without hesitation, Lily throws her arms around her father's legs, burying her face in his uniform. He scoops her up, holding her close, his rough exterior melting away as he showers her with kisses. The years of war and hardship seem to fade into the background as he twirls her around, lost in the pure joy of the moment. Lily's mother joins them, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. Together, they form a picture of familial bliss, their love and unity palpable in the very air they breathe. And as the sun climbs higher in the sky, bathing the meadow in its warm glow, their laughter and joy become one with the chorus of birdsong and the gentle rustling of leaves. For in this moment, they are reminded of the true meaning of home, the place where love resides, where hearts heal, and where dreams take flight. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of our story tonight. Thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed this tale, please don't forget to leave your comments below. What did you think? Which character resonated with you the most? Did this story evoke any memories for you? Your feedback is invaluable, and I can't wait to read your thoughts. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Doing so will ensure you never miss out on our nightly adventures. I'll see you again tomorrow with another captivating story. Until then, sleep well and dream big. I'm sorry about the darkness in this video, but it is intentional because I am trying to match the tone of the story. Paris, 1940. The city had fallen silent. The year before, the Germans had marched in and taken over. Now they were running the city. They were in charge. For the past 12 months, the streets had been empty, the cafes deserted, the restaurants cold, and the bakeries quiet. It was hard to believe that Just a few years earlier, this had been one of the liveliest cities in the world. A place where people came from all over to see and be seen, a place of lights and laughter and love. But now the only lights were the cold, harsh glow of the street lamps and the pale beams of the German searchlights combing the dark streets for any sign of life or resistance. And the only laughter was the cruel, mocking sound of the Nazi soldiers on patrol. It was dusk now, and the wind was rising, whipping the fallen leaves into miniature cyclones across the cobblestones. A few yards away, a group of German officers were swaggering along, their heavy boots echoing in the vast emptiness. As they passed by, the cafe door clicked shut behind them, and a man came out of the shadows. He unlocked the door with a key as big as his fist and pushed the door open. The bell above tinkled faintly, and the officers paused and stared in. For a moment, there was silence except for the whisper of the wind. Then one of the officers sneered and called out, "Here, you concierge. Go and tell your pianist to start playing." "We want to have some music," the man hesitated. "But sir," he began, "it's dangerous. If the British and the French hear us making noise, they might try to bomb the place." The officer laughed harshly. "And if they do, you will have the pleasure of seeing the last of them." He turned and strolled on, his companions following. The man shook his head sadly and went inside. In the flickering gaslight, the interior of the cafe seemed even more deserted than usual. Tables lay overturned, chairs were stacked on the tables, glasses were smashed on the floor, and dust lay thick on everything. He walked through the debris to the far wall and pushed aside a tapestry that hung in the place of a door. It revealed a small room with a single window and a piano. He went over to the piano, ran his hand over the keys, then sat down on the dusty stool and took a deep breath. He was alone, utterly alone. No customers, no waiters, no friends, not even an enemy. He could play anything he liked. He began with a few tentative notes, then played a waltz. The notes floated softly through the empty cafe and out into the street. As the music spread, people paused and listened. One by one, faces appeared at the shuttered windows. Some were curious, others frightened, and some just plain bored. He played on, filling the silence with lilting waltzes, lively polkas, and haunting melodies. People swayed to the rhythm in the safety of their darkened rooms, remembering happier times when they could dance and laugh without fear. Couples held each other close, hiding from the cold and the danger. Lovers stole shy glances at each other, while parents held their children close. For one brief hour, the darkness was filled with music, and the sound of music brought back memories of a time when Paris was gay and alive. Outside, the officers stopped and stared. One of them frowned. "What are those damn musicians playing?" "It sounds like a bloody symphony orchestra." Another shrugged. "Who cares? Let him play. I don't mind." He raised his glass in a mock toast. "To the brave concierge who entertains us with the music of his people." A third officer laughed loudly and clapped his hands. "Bravo, bravo." He turned and marched off, striding purposefully in the direction of the sound. The other two looked at each other and shrugged. They went on drinking and chatting quietly. Only one man remained. He stood motionless, staring at the cafe, his face impassive. His name was Hauptmann, and he was the most feared member of the Nazi Party in Paris. He was a monster, and yet there was something in the music that held him spellbound. Back inside, the man was playing a French lullaby. He sang softly in a voice roughened by years of smoking and sorrow. Outside, the people listening forgot their troubles for a few moments and dreamed of a better world. For 100 years, this cafe had been a place of refuge, and tonight it was a place of hope. Then suddenly, Hauptmann burst through the door. The notes died on the man's lips. All eyes turned to the newcomer. Hauptmann stood for a moment, taking it all in. Then he stepped closer and asked in broken French, "Who is playing?" The man rose slowly and said, "No one, sir." "No one is playing." Hauptmann stepped closer still and peered at the piano. "Then why does it sound like a piano?" The man shrugged helplessly. "I don't know." Hauptmann did not believe him, but he could not prove it, so he did the only thing he could think of. He sat down on the piano bench and began to play. His fingers were clumsy and untrained, and the only sound he could make was a series of discordant chords. The people outside winced and covered their children's ears. Then Houtman stopped abruptly and stood up. "You," he barked, pointing at the man. "Play." The man hesitated, torn between fear and duty. Finally, he sat down again and began to play softly. This time he played for himself, pouring his heart and soul into the music. He played for the lovers and the children, for the mothers and the fathers, for everyone who had lost faith in everything, for everyone who just needed a little hope. As the notes rang out, the people outside listened with rapt attention. They heard the sadness of the music, but also its strength and its courage. When the last note faded away, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then applause broke out, hesitant at first, then growing louder and longer. People pounded on the pavement outside until their hands were raw and bleeding. But the man could not hear their applause. He was too busy staring at the piano. He saw a look on Houtman's face that he had never seen before, a look of wonder and something else, something akin to remorse. Suddenly, the cafe door burst open and a young woman came running out, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. She cried, "The Gestapo, they're here. They're looking for the pianist. They want to take him away." The man knew what that meant. He was being hunted, not for the first time. He quickly hid under the piano and watched as the woman slipped out again, closing the door carefully behind her. He waited, listening to the sounds of men's voices and footsteps passing close by. He thought of his friends, the ones who had not been so fortunate as to escape the city. He thought of the men in uniform and the women in the resistance, of the people living in fear, and of the children who had never known a day without war. He played softly for them, filling the darkness with the sounds of freedom and hope. He played until dawn, when the Germans finally left and the birds began to sing. As the first rays of sunlight touched the dusty piano, the man stopped playing. The applause outside had died down, and the people were going about their daily business. He rose slowly and walked to the door. As he opened it and stepped out into the light, he saw that the street was deserted. He walked over to the nearest window and looked inside. The cafe was empty, the piano silent, but on the wall, scrunched up in a ball, was a single sheet of music. He picked it up and unfolded it carefully. On it was written, "To the pianist who played for us last night, a little girl from No. 13. The man smiled sadly and put the music down. He knew he could never play for the little girl again, but as long as people like her remembered, Paris would never be truly silent. Good night.